So if you do want to access it again, in a few days, we'll upload it to the Carmen orientation site. So I think we'll just dive right in, and I will hand it over to Tyler, who will be talking with us, I believe, about preparing papers today. Looks like Tyler may have frozen, but he should be back with us in a minute.
Yep, talking about.
Great.
Can you see me now?
Your picture is frozen for me. There you are. I think you're.
Awesome.
I think you're here again.
Okay. All right. Let me just upload. Let me share my screen so we can get started. All right, so let's get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome back again. My name is Tyler Eatman. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am an academic coach from the Dennis Learning Center, which we can talk a little bit more about later what an academic coach is. And welcome to today's presentation on preparing for papers. And it's the right way to doing so. So when we talk about our writing assignments, there are different types of writing assignments. There are essays, there are research papers, lab reports, response papers, case studies, reflections. There are a whole bunch of assignments that we'll have to do in our college careers. Most likely doing one of these, whatever field that you're in or whatever you're majoring in, definitely you have seen one of these before. And the goal of this workshop is to take some stress off of our writing our college papers and trying to understand what's a great flow to do it and a great structure to do this. So the different types of writing assignments, again, is the writing assignments that have different voices. So the who, the messages, the what, the purpose, the why, and the audience, to whom, for whom. So this is really helpful when you're thinking about how do I start my paper, or what am I doing? Like, what is this paper initially? Is this an essay? Is this a case study? Is this a reflection piece? Trying to figure out what you're actually going to do. The next, instructors have different expectations depending on the type of writing assignment. So depending on your writing assignment, your professors usually have a rubric for you already to do so. So making sure that you follow that rubric so you can get all the points essential, and making sure that you have the expectations already from that instructor of how to format this paper and what they're actually grading for, what are they looking for when they read your paper. Before writing a paper, carefully read the assignment and instructions. So paying attention to the purpose of the assignment, the length, format, style, everything that you can be helpful for you. So just make sure you're paying attention to that. And then lastly is to ask your professor for further clarifications. So this one is very important. So if you are confused about anything with your paper, just make sure you talk to your professor about this. They definitely can help you with questions that you might have, or if you might be stuck on something. So definitely reach out to them. So we're going to go over this outline of trying to figure out how to write a paper in an organized way. So there are 8 different steps. So we're going to go over each one of these more in depth as we go through this presentation. So the first step is choosing a topic. So critically for a good topic is to be familiar with it, be interesting, making sure it's important, sufficient details, attainable, and also meets the requirements. So when you're choosing a topic, making sure you have all these criteria for a good topic. So making sure you're familiar with the topic and knowing what you're going to write about, making sure you're interested in the topic, because some people do write topics that they might not be interested in. If you are interested in your topic, that is great, because you're going to feel that you're going to like writing this paper and doing research for this paper. The importance to understand why this is important, and is this important to you to write this paper as a criteria for a good topic, having enough details for you to support your topic, and being attainable. are you going to actually be able to finish this writing piece with the amount of time that's given? And lastly is meeting the requirements. So this is mainly when looking at probably our rubric. So understanding that you need to meet these requirements so you can get the highest grade possible for your paper. So one thing when trying to identify a topic, maybe you have different topics. So a great way is to brainstorm topics with this chart right here. So let's say you have 3 different topics possible for you. And you making sure you ask these 5 questions so you can be able to compare and contrast which one that you like to do. So making sure that you look at what the scope of the topic is, so broad to narrow, looking at what's the main focus of your paper. Next is the topic of academic importance. So is it scholarly? Seeing if it's like important to academics or does it make sense when writing it? Is it my personal familiarity / interest in this topic? So if you're interested or familiar with this topic, have personal interest in this topic, looking at checking if one of these topics do. Is there enough information available for you? So if you do that in-depth research, is there going to be enough information for each topic? And usually this is like one where students really narrow down their list to see which topic they want to choose from, because I know there's a lot of information out there, but sometimes whatever topic you have, it can be limiting to it. And lastly, does this topic fit the project requirements? I found this on the web. So, all right. So next is us keeping it narrow. So this is actually a great thing when we're trying to narrow down our topics. So if we have something broad and we're trying to narrow it down. So the example that I have for you is this diagram, and it shows you step by step of how we can do this. The process of going from broad to a narrow topic. And we have right here is motivation, so that's our broad topic. So even though that's like a good topic to have, let's make it even more narrow so we can understand what we want to talk about with motivation. So in the second step, we say, why is motivation important? Okay, we're starting to get there, but we probably need to incorporate some other stuff. So next is why motivation is critical aspect of academic success for college students. So that is as narrow as you're going to get. So we went from talking about motivation, which is like a broad, like there's so much to talk about with motivation, to next being why motivation is important. Okay, we're narrowing down our list just a little bit. And then going into this big question, why is it a crucial aspect to college students for their academic success? And that's basically a lot of information in that topic and you being able to piece out things to write about. And if you have trouble having to choose like a narrow topic or choose a broad topic and narrow it down using this process, that can really be helpful. So now I have a quick activity for you all. So with using the funnel method that I just talked about of us trying to narrow it down in those 3 steps, try to come up with a topic sentence on anything. I want to see like showing your progression. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself after the time is done. So I'm going to show you the example again right here. I'm going to keep this up for you all. So what I want you to do is using this method of the 3 steps, or even looking at this triangle with the funnel method, creating a topic sentence on anything and showing your progression as that. So I'm gonna give you guys about like 5 minutes to do so. If you do need more time, just let me know, but I'm going to give you 5 minutes to be able to do this. I'm gonna mute myself so you have time to do it. If you have any questions, just let me know. another like 2 more minutes until we're going to parent share with the group. All right, so that is time. So I want to ask if anyone would like to share their topic sentence or share their three-step process to their topic sentence with using the funnel method or using the three-step method that was in the pitch share.
I can share if you want to. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I decided to talk about recycling. And at first I did recycling in society, a broad vision. And then I put what needs to be improved in recycling for our society. And then I narrowed a little bit more and I did what needs to be improved in recycling for our society to a better future. I know my English is all wrong, but
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will anyone else like to share theirs? All right, so I guess we're moving on, but thank you for sharing yours. That was a great topic sentence and example to use from it. And definitely when try to use this when you're in the beginning stages of trying to write your paper, because it is going to be very much easy to narrow down your options and narrow down your topic to understand what's going to be going on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So next, let's talk about developing a thesis. So the definition of thesis is a statement or theory that is put forward as a premise to be maintained or provided. So usually when you write your thesis, this is usually in the beginning of your essays. So when talking about your thesis, it says puts forth the premise to be maintained. So it's an argument or your point of view. So it's based off of your perspective and what you think it's going to be. Like I said, it's like it says it's a statement or it's a theory. So it's not really that it's an accurate thesis or it's not that it's already like well known. It's just you thinking about it, either putting it into a statement or thinking about it as a theory. And you're taking, oftentimes we mention thesis and we're trying to figure out like how to write one, which is kind of hard. So a suggestion that I do give you when writing your thesis is to outline the points that will make sense to you or the points that you will make. So trying to outline the points that you'll make first and then trying to figure out, okay, what is my thesis? What am I actually trying to persuade or what am I actually trying to argue or what point of view am I having? And then it keeps you organized when you're trying to write your papers as well. So when you do have that thesis, you're able to keep that structure and making sure that you're outlining and following them correctly. So the different types of theses depends on the type of paper that you're writing. So there's analytical, expository, and argumentative. So an analysis of the student admissions process reveals a key challenge facing counselors choosing between students with the high test scores and students with a strong extracurricular background. So analytical, this breaks down the component and evaluates them. So with this, you see in this example that it gives you something to write about with trying to figure out, okay, choosing between students having high test scores and students that have strong extracurricular activities. So this is like basically where you get for most of your like reading and writing classes, possible like your English classes, 1101, your first level or second level writing courses. They give a lot of analytical writing pieces. So basically giving you a topic and you just have to write about it. Next is our expository. So this is explains ideas, process, and phenomenons. This is usually like writing a story about yourself. I know a lot of times when we are in our secondary schools, we usually will do like expository writing with trying to figure out, okay, so like writing a story about yourself and writing a story that can help you like understand, like they want to see if you can write a story, if you can a story tell. So the life of a typical college student is classified by time spent studying, attending classes, and socializing with peers. So probably with this piece, if I was a professor, they'll say, okay, now write a story or write a story about a life of a typical college student from your perspective. So this is basically giving you like free range of writing whatever you want, just focusing on that topic. And argumentative is basically something you make claims about the topic and then use evidence for support. So this is usually for more like of debates. So maybe for our pre-law students that are in here, or if we have any students that are in the law school, you do a lot of argumentative writing pieces, trying to defend or refute this claim or this evidence that you have. An example of that is high school grads should be required to take a year off to pursue community service projects before entering college in order to increase their maturity and global awareness. So our next step is to creating an outline. So we talked a little bit more about this yesterday with creating outlines, even though there is different examples, but like I told you yesterday, we're trying to like outline your paper. On the left-hand side, we have a formal outline. This is usually the way I go when I'm writing my papers. So this formal outline with basically starting your introduction paragraph and then having your 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. With that, you just jotting down some notes of what you actually want to write about. So creating a topic, finding out a topic that you want to write about that'll draw the audience and be able to understand what you want to get them hooked in. And then having subtopics from that, which you include in your body paragraphs. So this is the usual outline that I use for my papers. And I can tell you that this is really helpful when I am writing definitely long papers for most of my classes. And definitely taking each one of these after you finish the outline and taking time to write this one by one. You don't want to write a whole paper in like one sitting because it's not very helpful for you to like revise it and go back to it. And also continues with stress. And it doesn't help you with trying to flesh out your details. So what I do when writing my papers is to break up my time. So I write my introduction paragraph on day 1, and then day 2, I'll write my first body paragraph, then second, third, and then I'll write my conclusion. And then on the last day, I'll like revise and edit it, make changes to the different style that the professor wants. So that's something I recommend you all to use. If not, you don't like this formal outline way and you more want to connect the information, I would say looking at this mind map right here. So where you have in the center is your main topic. So your topic is my APA. And you go into different small bubbles trying to connect this topic and having different details. So maybe if you're more of a visual learner, I would recommend doing the mind map. But if you need that really like structure and formality, I would say continue with the formal outline. And if you want to create a mind map, there are also ones that you can hand draw, but there are also ones that you can go on websites to use. So this is Bubble Us. It's a free mind map software that you can use to insert things to make outlines for yourself. This is also great for studying and connecting information from there as well. So looking at this website, or you can Google other websites with trying to make mind maps or even hand draw them as well. Next is conducting research. So what I want to ask is, have any of you have ever done a research paper? So if you have done a research paper, I want you to use your reaction button. So thumbs up if you have, and thumbs down if you haven't. Okay. So it looks like that most of us have done a research paper. And now we're going to talk about how to conduct with that research paper. Or actually, I'm going to ask a question. So for anyone that has written a research paper, how have you conducted research? Anyone would like to share? All right, so that's fine. So when I know I have done a research paper before. So when I was doing research paper, what I utilized a lot was something called Google Scholar, which is a great resource when trying to conduct research. They have a whole bunch of different articles on there. So I highly recommend Google Scholar for most of you if you're interested, or if you have to write a paper for your upcoming semester. So there are different types of sources when trying to conduct research. There are books, academic journals, government publications, news magazines, blogs, dictionaries, encyclopedias. I would say steer from encyclopedias because you have to see if they're credible sources, especially things like Wikipedia, which is not really a reputable source when trying to do research for some of your papers. But if you are interested in looking for like these types of sources, definitely if you input Google Scholar, if you type in Google Scholar in your Google search bar, it gives you a whole bunch of things. If you write your topic, it gives you books, academic journals, articles, a whole bunch of stuff with citations and everything already available. So when we're thinking about our sources, always make sure that they're scholarly / peer reviewed and published in a journal or in like any type of academic media. Recent or historical relevance. So if it's historical or recent relevance to your topic. Strong supporting arguments. So making sure that you have strong supporting arguments from those sources. Unbiased motives. So for example, being aware of like articles that are related to race or related to other things like laws that might be passed, different bills that were passed as well, so things like that. And credible sources cited in the article. So see the article's bibliography. Definitely looking at that and see if you can find even more sources to write about. Because when you look in the bibliography, there's like source after source, and you get more in depth with each topic. So now when conducting research, there's also trying to find the sources. So I know OSU university libraries, they have library.osu.edu, and then it helps you to find different sources that are available to you, just like I was talking about with Google Scholar. OSU is a research university, so it does have lots of different research available for you to take advantage of. Next is going to go.osu.edu/choosing sources. So if you go to this website, you can definitely look at like great sources for like ebooks if you're looking for, and it tells you what types of sources they do have. This is also a great resource as well. So now let's talk about tips for organizing our research. So our first step is to take good notes. So outlining mind map and flashcards. So like I talked about before, looking at some good notes to take when going over these research. Maybe having your mind map available for you, like you know what topics you want to talk about, and to fill in the circle even more, you can add more notes to it from the research that you're talking about. Next is making sure you know which information goes with which source and the page numbers. So identifying and having that on like whatever outline that you have, making sure you know the information that goes where and which source it goes to with the credible page number. So this is usually like your citation. So making sure that you can have all the stuff for your citation, which is the next bullet, is citing your sources before you start writing them. Include some in-text citations. And this might look different between what style you're going to use, either if it's MLA, APA, Chicago, anything that your professor wants you to use the style, making sure you're adapting to that with citing your information. And then next is bookmarking the link to your sources. So having probably like a full page of sources or links for your sources on a separate doc so you can refer back to them. So our sources, citations, so there's different types of citations. So like I said, there's APA, MLA, and Chicago, or there might be others that your professor might use, make their own format. So just understanding that the different types of citations is very important because you want to give the author their recognition for the sources. Next is familiarizing yourself with different components of citations. So the author's name, the paper title, book titles, publisher, and other things as well. So making sure that you have at least a minimum of this for you to be able to cite your information. And then next, there are resources. So there are manuals, tutorials, websites for the style you are using. So things for APA, MLA, Chicago, other things as well. A great one to utilize is Purdue OWL. I know I utilize that a lot when trying to write my, my sources down so I could cite them. And the next is Citation Builder. So EasyBib. I know EasyBib is a big one that most of you might have used if you have done a paper. And the website is right here, go.osu.edu/EasyBib. If you use that, it will help you with your citations. Just make sure that it is up to date, because I know APA always has different versions coming out, and making sure you don't get dock points since you didn't utilize the right format. And then here on the bottom, you see an example of a source site. This is Hamlet. So they cited the information as followed. I believe this is the APA format for, this is the APA format for citation. So this is, I believe, version 9 of the APA format, but there's more versions coming up as time goes on. Next is the writing component. So we talked about all this planning. Now let's talk about actually doing this writing. So when trying to write this like 5-paragraph essay, make sure that you still have this hourglass structure. And all essays should manage this hourglass structure. Whatever topic that you're using for. So on the left-hand side is more for things like our analytical, expository reading assignments. And then on the right is more for our argumentative or any like science papers that we have to do. That is helpful. So let's start about talking about like the introduction. So the introduction, so introduce your topic and the necessary background information. This can help you with trying to get the reader's attention and seeing what you're actually talking about, and providing some background information about this topic so they have some sense of, okay, what do I need to know in order to continue to read your paper. Orient readers in the conversation, so the context, and tell them what the scholars/scientists have said about the topic. So within the background information or after you're done, what are some scholars or scientists that have said about the topic that you're talking about? And then lastly is use your thesis to state your primary argument/premise. Enter the conversation. So you enter the conversation by bringing your own perspective. Like I said, with the definition of thesis, it's your point of view, statement, or theory. So remember, the length of the introduction should be proportional and appropriate to the length of your entire paper. So you don't want your introduction paragraph to be a page long and then have your body paragraphs to be half a page. So make sure that you proportionalize it throughout the whole paper, and making sure that each one of them have a similar structure as well. Next is our body paragraph. So every body paragraph should have a topic, evidence, and analysis. So usually this is the format you should use whenever you're writing your papers, is have the steps going for you. So link your paragraphs by using transitional devices. They help readers understand your logic and make your argument unified. So making sure that you have this like structure flow with each other. So your paper, what they're supposed to do is supposed to be like a string. So it's supposed to flow through one another. So they're supposed to be understanding and being able to transition from one another. So here's some examples. So if you want to add more, so what's equally important, furthermore, what's more. To give an example to demonstrate, and instead of like this, and to summarize it / conclude, on the whole, summing up, thus. There are a lot of different transitions out there. You can go to this website right here if interested in using transitions, or even just Googling transition devices for your writing assignments is really helpful. And when you are doing any writing assignments, like I said, you're supposed to have that evidence and analysis. So making sure that you flesh out your argument. So provide enough evidence for every claim that you make and state the obvious. Even though the person might think that it's obvious what you're trying to say, even though you think it might be obvious what you're trying to say, other people might not get that. So making sure that you state the obvious and flesh out your details, and making sure that you have evidence for every claim, just like you're writing as a lawyer, basically. So making sure you have all your claims, all your evidence, and making sure that it's being obvious for you and for the person that's reading it. So for the conclusion, don't just summarize the paper. It's not, that's somewhat what a conclusion is for. Conclusion is just to finally talk about like what's your perspective on this, and to sum up just like some little points, not the whole entire paper, but some points that you want to really reflect on as they finish reading your paper. So discuss implications of your argument. So this is basically your point of view. You're writing the paper and your perspective on that. Propose further discussion for it. So what does this information imply / predict? So making an overall prediction of what you wrote about, what do you think is going to happen next? And lastly is to use strong and simple words to pack a punch. So a lot of people utilize this like thesaurus.com to like try to find big words that they're trying to say. I would say just keep it simple. So just have simple words that are meaningful and strong in order to have an effective conclusion when writing your papers. Next is revising and editing your papers. So after you're done, so we're done writing our paper. We're on that day 5 of editing our paper now. So when doing that, so take a break for a few days before revising or editing your paper. So this does also depend on if you do have time to do this. But I would say definitely schedule out time in your day to revise your paper. Don't just revise your paper after finish writing it. I think you should take a day to process the information, to relax, and then revise it. Double check your spelling, and it isn't perfect. Like, all our spelling is not always perfect, so making sure that you utilize that spell check. And also, if you do have Grammarly, I highly suggest that. That really is helpful, something to invest in. That's what I utilize a lot when editing my papers. Grammarly is a great source to help with papers. Read out loud to hear if it flows well. Even record yourself. So this is something that I do. I record myself while saying the paper, and sometimes when you read it, it's hard for you to pick up on those mistakes or pick up on if the idea actually flows. So if you record yourself, you're able to have this conversation. That's basically what papers are. They're supposed to be conversations that you have with someone. You're just writing it. So making sure if you record yourself, you're able to understand that information. So to print out, to mark up, and easily to see mistakes on a computer screen. So it is sometimes hard to mark up our papers when we're doing it on our laptops or our iPads. So I would suggest either you printing out your paper and actually physically, like handwriting, grabbing a pen and marking up that paper. And then lastly, have someone else read your paper, read it to check your content, grammar, and spelling. Maybe you might have some friends that are great at editing papers or reading papers with like your spelling or grammar or content. So definitely asking them to read over your paper to see things that you might not picked up on, but they have. And one good resource on campus to utilize for looking over papers is our Writing Center. So if you go to Google and just type OSU Writing Center, you can schedule an appointment, hour-long appointment with them to go over your paper, and they can help you edit it, give you suggestions, things like that. I utilized this a lot my freshman year of college, and I got a bond with the tutor that I had, and she was amazing. She helped me a lot all the time, and I always did great on my papers because she will revise it, and she saw the improvement every time I came to her with the papers. So definitely highly suggest using the Writing Center. They're a great resource on campus. Next is our proofreading. So pay attention to the details, and the details like your spelling, your grammar, punctuation, style. So making sure you're looking over all this and seeing if you're hitting everything and have all the details possible for you. So check your assignment instructions and or rubric to point by point. So making sure that you're incorporating all the stuff when you're doing this writing assignment. We tend to get sidetracked when trying to do these writing assignments of following the structure that is available for us. Just make sure that you are following that rubric point by point and also the assignment instructions. Next are tips for overcoming that writing hurdle, because we all have that writing hurdle. We're like, man, I don't know what to talk about next. So here's some tips to overcoming this writing hurdle. So making sure that you brainstorm and narrow down the topic and write primarily your thesis before you start writing. So making sure you have all these details flushed out even before you start writing your assignments. If you do have trouble with this overcoming this writing hurdle, maybe meeting up with your professor to discuss your paper is another thing to do. They can definitely help you try to flesh out your details. I don't think any professor will say no to this, but they will definitely help you see what's the next step for you in order to write this paper and guide you through the process. Break up the paper into segments and work over time. So we talked about this with that formal outline. It's something that I do and recommend it to you all, is to break up each one of the paragraphs and write one a day instead of writing a whole paper at the whole time. Next is setting goals for yourself. So example, writing section A on Monday and then rewarding yourself. Keeps any fatigue and reinforces positive behavior. So this is another thing when you're breaking up your assignments. You can set goals. So my goal is to write my introduction paragraph today. And then after I do that, I'm going to reward myself with possibly, let's say, going out with my friends or watching a show on Netflix, or even, let's say, eating a pint of ice cream, something like that. And then lastly, do not edit as you draft. It interrupts the flow of thoughts and gets ideas on paper, revises and edit after. So that's why I do not edit during your writing of your paper, because it will interrupt that flow that you're trying to do. So do that revisions and editing at the end of all writing your paper. So now another thing that is important to talk about, and if I didn't talk about it, it'll be really wrong for me. So understanding the idea of plagiarism. So plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or idea and passing them off as your own. So this is why we talked about making sure you cite your sources when trying to do so, with finding all the sources and citing them and giving them the credit that is due. I know OSU has a strong policy on plagiarism. So if you do plagiarize, there's a whole bunch of steps within trying to plead your case for this. I know the Office of Academic Misconduct, they take the case and they see what your plagiarism, and it can even lend to sometimes with plagiarizing work, even getting kicked out of the university. So this is why we always make sure that we cite our information. And then actually on the bottom here is a piece of plagiarism on the Code of Student Conduct, which says the representation of another work of ideas as one's own includes the unacknowledged word-for-word use and or paraphrasing of another person's work and or the inappropriate unacknowledged use of another person's idea. So basically that's how they state plagiarism in their student conduct. So making sure that you have that. Next is quoting and paraphrasing and summarizing. So there are different things when trying to prevent plagiarism. So having these things are important. So with quotations, so it must be identical to the original, use the narrow segments of the source. They must match the source document word for word. It must be accountable to the original author. So making sure that you have this work available for you and making sure it's word from word and having quotations and the right style for it. Now, paraphrasing involves putting passages from sources, materials into your own words. This is really, must have the original source available for you to cite with this as well. And then next is summarizing, so putting the main ideas into your own words. This is usually the best thing to do, trying to read something and you putting it into your own words so you prevent anything from happening with plagiarism. And then Purdue OWL is a great way, it's a great resource you can look at for quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing if you need more examples. And so why to avoid plagiarism is because when we're writing a paper, you often expect to engage with other sources. So don't hide the fact that you have done research. Definitely don't do that. Don't hide that. You have done a lot of research to focus on with plagiarism and understanding that you have done this research, but just don't rewrite what they're trying to say. With citing demonstrates that you have consulted like other resources, and which helps increase the credibility of your paper. So when you cite sources, it makes your paper even more credible because you're able to see that other people have written on this topic and you're able to understand it more as well. And you're able to understand other academic pieces of articles, which makes it like a strong paper. So that was a lot of content, and I am actually finished with that. So those were the, I think, 10 steps to writing a paper. Does anyone have any questions or comments they would like to say about anything that I went over?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, concerning the meeting with our professor to discuss the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, what is the best moment to talk, to discuss our paper to our professor? I mean, before we write the paper or after we we have done the draft of it, or what? I'm just a little bit confused. Yeah.
So yeah, great question. So I would say talk to the professor whenever you are like stumped on something within your paper. You can definitely consult with your professor before the paper, like expectations that they're looking for and what they're trying to see what you're trying to do. And also, you could talk to them after, say if like you don't like the grade that you got, or maybe you have a question about like something they gave a comment on your paper. Definitely ask your professor about that too, to see what you can improve on for next time.
Okay. Oh, even if we got the grade of the paper, we can discuss it with our professor.
So yeah, you're definitely able to discuss your grade with your professor. A lot of students do that, saying maybe if they didn't get the right grade they want and pleading their case to the professor might change the grade actually. So you can always negotiate your grade with your professor as well after doing any assignment. And not just for papers, for maybe tests, like maybe like, okay, well, I thought this, and this for like this, why I chose this question on on my midterm or my final. You can definitely consult with your professor to see if you can work that out with clarification.
Okay. Yeah. Understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? I know there was something in the chat box, Caroline, but I'm unable to see them.
Okay, yeah, I think we've covered most of what's there. There was someone who asked for some links. I'm just waiting to hear back specifically which links you would like us to provide. I'm sure we can do that. All the links for the future workshops are in the Carmen course calendar, but if you're having trouble finding them, I can definitely post them into the chat. I would especially put in a plug for what I mentioned in the chat earlier about how we have a workshop next Tuesday, which is focusing specifically on academic conduct issues like plagiarism and other forms of academic misconduct. So I would highly encourage you to attend that. I'm our office's liaison with the Committee on Academic Misconduct, so I work with all the students who are charged with misconduct. And unfortunately, we do see that international students tend to be overrepresented in those cases because they're coming from different educational backgrounds where expectations are a little bit different. So sometimes the adjustment to our system it doesn't go as smoothly as it could for some students. So that's a workshop that I would definitely encourage you to come to if you can. So thanks a lot, Tyler, for presenting today. Kind of as I have on other days, I'll stay on the call just for a couple more minutes to see if any other questions come in. But thank you all very much for attending. And we will hopefully see you back tomorrow or next week for some more of our workshops. So thank you, everyone.